How's it going, everybody? My name is Jason. I'll be your host on this CFL talk show, Hussey's Huddle. In this video, we cover what the future holds for the CFL in Atlantic Canada and whether that dream is ever going to come to fruition. But really quick before we get started, if you are new and you want to support the channel, the best way to do it is just by hitting that like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. With that said, let's get into today's video. So I won't go too far into the history of it all, but basically, off and on over the last 40 so years, there's been a push to put a CFL team in Atlantic Canada. This has been for a few reasons. First, that Atlantic Canada has no major representation on the national stage in terms of Canadian sports teams. And the fact that the CFL has famously had only 9 teams for a good 5 years now, and before that they had 8. And getting to 10 teams has been an accomplishment that a lot of CFL fans and longtime followers of the league have always dreamt of seeing this league successfully accomplish. In the 1980s, there was actually an agreement between the league and this ownership group in Halifax to have an expansion team called the Atlantic Schooners. And of course, this, for several different reasons, fell through, and the team never had a chance to take the field. In 2018, this name of the Atlantic Schooners was revived by this ownership group looking to bring an expansion franchise into the CFL. In 2019, they were able to secure a deal with the Halifax City Council for conditional funding on a new stadium project in the region. And the idea was that that stadium would eventually host a CFL team. And since then, this ownership group and the league have been in negotiations for conditions upon gaining an expansion franchise to the league. And it's been a big topic around the league over the last several years. But basically, the hammer has just fallen over the last couple of days about the long-term viability of this project because of everything that's going on in the world right now. Governments don't have much money to spend right now, and that was reflected when, just this past week, the Halifax City Council decided to discontinue the funding project for this stadium. And so, I just wanted to look over this today, give my thoughts on the situation, and whether or not this dream could have worked out or will work out in the future, or is it dead? And the first thing that comes to mind with the whole idea of a CFL team in Atlantic Canada, is that the CFL desperately needs this. They need to branch out into new markets. And my view of the CFL right now is that the league's big cities, the big city teams such as Toronto, Montreal, and BC, those fan bases in recent years haven't done much to help the league in a larger sense in terms of a business-wise. They don't really support them. Those are traditionally the worst teams for attendance-wise over the last several years. And so I think going into smaller markets makes sense to a degree in the CFL. And if you just look at it, the rest of the league does pretty well, all things considered, when you take out those big 3 teams. And so I think going into these smaller cities and almost like, if you can get their costs under control, it would be just a huge benefit to the league. I think that's an avenue for this league to grow going into the future. But the problem is building these stadiums. And this is a problem that's not unique to the CFL. It's completely a problem in every sports league out there right now, is that traditionally the only way that these projects get done is with government money in some way or another. It's very rare that these private corporations or private ownership groups are willing to pay for 100% of the project. And so gaining public funds has always been a big tug of war with different cities. It's really hard to get that public support on your side in order to build these projects. And honestly, I think the Atlantic Schooners, they were very far ahead in this, and I think there was enough support for it before the the pandemic hit. And unfortunately, this has really changed the reality that we are operating under. And my first thought is that, is it dead forever? Is this dream dead forever in the CFL? And I'm going to say it's not. I think this, down the road, this could definitely be revisited. But right now, the government simply just don't have the money, that extra money, to spend and throw at these massive projects right now. And especially when a lot of these different studies have shown time and time again that the economic benefits of having a stadium, as much as I am a fan of sports, these studies have shown that they really don't help economically in a huge larger sense. And even though there are spin-off benefits, it doesn't necessarily add up to a net positive for the economy in terms of a larger sense. The stadium issue is just the biggest roadblock to getting this done, obviously. And obviously, so much depends on what happens with the CFL's comeback in 2021. If this league can reestablish themselves and get back on solid footing over the next couple of years, say 5 years down the road, I think this Atlantic Dream could live on, and expansion in general in the CFL could live on. But if the league doesn't get back on solid footing, just case closed. It's not going to happen. And it just, without that, the security of the league, there's no extra teams that are going to be added to the CFL anytime soon. And the other side I look at it from is whether or not, if all these things that I've just said, if everything works out with the stadium and everything like that, would it actually work out? And I think this is the most fascinating part of the debate, because I think there's not really a consensus in this regard among public opinion among CFL fans about whether or not this would work in Atlantic Canada. Would they be able to support a team out there? From one perspective is that they would have to have a smaller stadium, obviously, because of the smaller population and everything. And from that regard, in order to make money, they're going to have to charge more money per ticket, naturally. But I do think that they could definitely draw the necessary attendance in order to fill that stadium on a regular basis. I think football has some unique aspects that aren't relevant to other leagues. For example, if you had to put a basketball team or a hockey team out there in Atlantic Canada, they have so many more games to sell out, and that's getting that many games to get people to buy tickets for is much more of a challenge, as opposed to a football a CFL season where there's only 9 home games a year. You can easily do that in Atlantic Canada. But whether or not they would be willing to pay the massive prices that are probably going to be required to make money on a smaller stadium, the size of 12,000, I think it was, for what the Schooners' proposed stadium was. To make money on that, they would have to pay exuberant ticket prices. Paying high prices for tickets is nothing new. And if sports fans are really invested, they will support that. I do think that the support is there, and I think that it would be a major attraction for not just people in Nova Scotia, but people in New Brunswick and PEI, and maybe even some new people from Newfoundland and Labrador, to make these trips during the CFL season in the summer. It's like, hey, let's make a trip to Halifax. People plan trips around events like this, like a concert or, a sporting event. And I just think that because of the CFL's limited amount of games versus other sports potentially, I just think that they would have the amount of attendance support to support this team out there. But of course, I think just the biggest thing is whether or not the CFL itself will be able to shoulder the load of another team that's probably not going to, even if they do well with that 12,000 seat stadium, if they sell that out all the time, even at high ticket prices, I don't imagine that they would make a tremendous profit on that. And seeing as the CFL is already in a situation where a lot of their teams are not turning a profit every year, I'm not too sure if the CFL is going to be willing or is going to be able to just risk adding another team that's probably not going to add to the financial situation of the league to assist this financial situation in the league. They would probably rather go to a market that probably has more potential for growth in terms of their population, or they just demographics, right? And so my answer to the question in the thumbnail is: the CFL's dream in Atlantic Canada dead? I would say for the foreseeable future, it absolutely is, because major problems that are obviously facing the league and the world and just everything in general. Here are the few things that need to happen for a team to happen. First, there has to be this stadium has to be complete, or like very much in progress. The league has to be able to bankroll this. Obviously the ownership group will have to pay an expansion fee to get a team in the league, but the league is going to have to also financially support this team like they've been doing for other teams like Montreal. And seeing as profit sharing and everything like that, I think everybody paid, I think it was $600,000 to keep the Montreal Alouettes afloat in 2019. That is a big red flag, I think, for the possibility of an Atlantic Canada team. And I just don't think that the league would be willing, in the short term anyway, without seeing any kind of big bounce back boom in terms of the league's financial situation. I don't see how they can add a 10th team, especially one that may not add to the economic benefits of the league in a huge, larger sense. I don't know. There's a lot up in the air in terms of the CFL's financial landscape in general, how much they make money off of ticket sales and merchandise, and versus how little relatively they make off the TV deals with TSN. And these are all questions that need to be figured out before we even remotely have revisit the idea of bringing a team to Atlantic Canada again. And unfortunately, this is just a I feel so sorry for everybody out in the Atlantic Canada. It seemed like the momentum towards this idea was really building over the last couple of years, and then obviously the circumstances of the world and the CFL right now just drag down the possibility of this happening for this foreseeable future. But I will say the hope is not all lost. We just have to root for the CFL to fix its existing problems, and hopefully the world gets back to normal pretty soon, and we can start expanding the CFL in the future. But for the least that I would say the least next 5 to 10 years, you just won't see any kind of sort of CFL expansion, if not teams going under because of the financial situation that we're seeing in the league. But those are just my thoughts on the situation. I'd like to hear everybody's thoughts in the comment section below. If you want to support the channel, the best way to do it is just by hitting that like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. Thanks again. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.